Hey, so this is a response video to the comments section of my questions for atheist video. It was getting really, really hard to keep up with all the comments. There was like over 160 comments, and they were all angry evolutionists. And it was like 100 people versus me, and I was still doing my best to respond to them all, but I simply couldn't respond to them all. So I'm hoping that at least some of you, if not every single one of you, sees this video. That'd be cool. So there's a couple things that I did in that last video. I wasn't very specific about. And the reason that is I wasn't really expecting anybody to see that video. To be honest, I have 30 some subscribers, and that video somehow got like 300 plus views and growing. I don't know how that happened, but I'm hoping this one you guys see as well. I don't know what I did to make that one go as far as it did, but hopefully I'll do it with this one too. So first things first, somebody said you need to define what you mean by evolution. And yeah, I guess you're right, because evolution does happen on the level of adaptation, speciation, and that is real, testable, repeatable, observable science, right? But macroevolution, as some people call it, I'll just define what I meant. I kind of thought everybody knew what I meant by context, but I'll define what I mean by evolution when I say what I mean really by macroevolution. I'll just say that. I know it's not the best term or whatever, and somebody's like, you really shouldn't use the term macroevolution. I'm trying to allow you to make sense of what I'm saying. You understand that? Okay, so this is what I mean by macroevolution. Oh, shoot. I just got rid of it. Oh, here we go. A process by which different kinds of living organisms are thought to have developed and diversified from earlier forms during the history of the Earth. That is what I mean when I say macroevolution does not happen. It doesn't happen. We know this doesn't happen. People, try to argue this or whatever because you're desperate to cling on to the idea of evolution. And I'm not saying if we don't understand everything about this theory, that means God did it. A lot of people tried to put that in my mouth. I didn't say that once, anything near that in my last video. I don't believe, anyways. I certainly didn't mean to. And I had a lot of people go, well, where's your evidence for your God or whatever? I had a lot of people ask me that. That's what my whole YouTube channel is. That's my entire YouTube channel. If you want to see my evidence for God, go look at my YouTube channel. But I will tell you why you automatically made the assumption that that's what I meant. And that is because so far, the only theories we got is evolution and special creation. That's really it. If you can think of something else, you're welcome to. That's what science is here for. We want to get to the bottom of things. But when something is disproven, we throw it out. We don't sit here and go, because we don't want to believe in special creation. Okay? And I'm not saying once again, because I know for a fact there will still be comments that say, well, just because we don't understand it doesn't mean God did it. That's not what I'm saying. To clarify one more time, that's not at all what I'm claiming. My evidence for God is completely separate from my evidence to disprove evolution. Sometimes you get a double whammy, and that's cool. And I'll bring up one of those double whammies in a minute. But it's not what I'm saying. My evidence for God you can find in my YouTube channel. I am starting to touch on some evolutionary subjects, though. So that's that. Anyways, I was going to read this this excerpt from a scientific journal entitled Meanderings in Sequence Space, a biophysical view of protein evolution. I was going to read this whole excerpt for you guys, but I don't see much of a point. If you want to look it up, once again, it's Misson's Meanderings in Sequence Space, a biophysical view of protein evolution. And this whole paper is about the problems with protein evolution. It does not work. It's false. It's fiction. It's mythology, really. For instance, microevolution. I know you don't like that term, but settle down. It's the best way I have to. It's the best term I have to use. Microevolution, adaptation, speciation. That's science because we can test, observe, and repeat it. Macroevolution and abiogenesis and stellar evolution, planetary evolution, that is all philosophy by definition. By definition. But if we're not going to nitpick on words and definitions, which you guys like to do, I don't, I'm not going to do that. It's still not science. It's simply not. In fact, it's anti-science. It goes against what science tells us, and I'm about to present that to you. But this is an outdated, philosophical, really mythological idea that was made popular by a man named Charles Darwin back in the 1800s when he was riding his horse to work, didn't know what a cell was, thought it was a blob of jelly, didn't know what DNA was. It might have made sense to him back then. If Darwin was an honest man, it might have made sense to him. But if Darwin was an honest man today and he knew what we know today, he would never come up with that theory because it's silly. It's silly. And let me tell you why. Let me tell you why evolution itself is silly. This isn't even what my video is on, but everybody seemed to want to talk about evolution in the comment section, so we can talk about it. Mutations are bad. Mutations are a bad thing. And that's what this whole paper that I just cited is on. Oh, by the way, for those of you that's going to say, well, who knows if that was a good cited source or not, this is from the Department of Organismic and Evolutionary Biology, Harvard University, page 678, September 2005, volume 6. That's about as specific as I can be. I know you guys are really trying to go hard on me here, but there you go. There's my source. It's talking about how mutations are not neutral. In fact, I'll just go ahead and read you this one line. There are currently no models that reconcile the constant rate of protein evolution with the biochemical reality that missense mutations have large context-dependent effects that few, if any, are selectively neutral. And so few, if any, are selectively neutral. And we know that in the human population, the human species, we have about 100 mutations per person per generation on average. 100 mutations per person per generation. And we know that evolution doesn't work like on an individual basis. I'm not going to transform into something else. It's a population as a whole, right, that slowly evolves. So that means, let's say there's 7 billion people on the planet. I think it's even more than that, but we'll go with 7 billion. That means that there's 700 billion mutations this generation alone. In one generation in the human population, 700 billion mutations. And I've never been shown one beneficial mutation. We used to think there were beneficial mutations in the human species until we found out that this is actually just epigenetics, which is traits turning on and off, not a mutation. Now, there are some mutations that have been pointed to in other species where evolutionists will go, see, it's a beneficial mutation. But it's truly not, and I'll explain why. It might be temporarily beneficial, but in the long run, it's a loss of genetic information. It never is a gain of genetic information. I've asked 100 evolutionists to show me evidence of a mutation that gains information. I've never been shown it. Now, I'm no all-knowing guru like some of you think that I'm claiming to be. No, not at all. And so if you have one, go ahead and post it below. I'm not going to sit here and argue about is there one or two beneficial mutations. I've never seen one. All I've seen is epigenetics. But even if there is one or two beneficial mutations compared to the 700 billion mutations in this generation alone in the human species, that leaves 699,999,999,998 negative mutations, which we just found out few are neutral, if any. Okay, let's give it 10. It's still over 6,999,000,000 negative mutations. And so what scientists are people that want to do real science are trying to figure out now is how are we not extinct 100 times over? And in fact, Standing for Truth just posted a video about that. And all right, so I get that's pretty much all I needed to say about mutations. I mean, oh no, it's not. Another argument against evolution. If we are evolving, and mutations are our mechanism for evolution, why would the evolutionary process through mutations create a process in our genome code or a process in our body that protects us against mutations? There are multiple mechanisms to protect the integrity of our genetic code, to protect against mutations. If this were an evolutionary process by mutation to something bigger and better, why would it create a process to protect the integrity of the original genetic code? That's stupid. That's silly. It doesn't make sense because it doesn't happen. I'm sorry, guys. I'm sorry. I know you guys get emotional when I challenge your religious beliefs, but come on, let's be realistic. This is anti-science. You guys are trying to say I'm anti-science. Go look at my videos. They're not anti-science. The biblical model lines up perfectly with the scientific evidence. In fact, this same article that I have cited also tells us that we believe that mutations started about, or at least the majority of mutations started about 5,000 years ago. 5 to 10,000 is the number they gave. Well, that matches perfectly with what we would expect from a biblical model, right? First of all, that also completely contradicts evolution. Completely. I mean, if mutations, the majority of our deleterious mutations have only been happening for a couple thousand years, I mean, that doesn't match up with the rest of the evolution theory, obviously. It does match up perfectly with the biblical model. We suggest, or not we, the Bible tells us that the Earth is roughly 6,500 years old, right? Well, so Adam and Eve had their family, and they were slowly growing the population level, and then God wiped out the population with a flood, and then I think it's about 100 years later, the Tower of Babel happened, and people started being dispersed. throughout the world. And so, if this were the case, we would expect that about 4,500 years ago is when our mutations really started being amped up. And not because the mutation rate was amped up, it because the population growth, right? So, if most science is showing us that most of our deleterious mutations started about 5,000 years ago, the Bible or biblical creationists would suspect that this started happening about 4,500 years ago. That's only a 500-year difference in what the science, real science, shows us. And these are biochemists that wrote this paper. So that's just another interesting point. Let me see if there was anything else I wanted to cover on mutations. Oh yeah, I didn't talk about natural selection. Do you truly believe that natural selection is gonna destroy over 600,999,000,000 deleterious mutations per generation? I don't think so. I don't think there is a mechanism that can do that. Um, I've certainly never been pointed to one by an evolutionist. Um, all right. So, yeah, I think I've made my case for mutations. I mean, I have a whole stack of notes here on, on our DNA. And mutations. But I think I pretty much made my point. So let's go over to the abiogenesis. I also pointed out the nebular hypothesis. Nobody seemed to want to talk about that because there's just absolutely so many problems with it in the evolutionary model. And I think that's probably why nobody wanted to talk about that. But abiogenesis. You guys think there is a reasonable explanation for it? And as I was trying to go through comment to comment and point out, but I obviously didn't get to all the comments. First of all, cytosine cannot be made by material processes. There's no material process. There's no chemical combination that makes cytosine. The only place cytosine is made is in the cell. Okay. Another problem. You need proteins in order to make proteins. Or even if you had a protein to start, it's useless without the machinery in the cell that the ribosomes and everything else that is needed for this process of creation or creating proteins to happen. In other words, you need proteins to make proteins. Summed up, you have a chicken and egg problem. So considering the chicken and egg problem and the cytosine problem, this tells us you need a full cell off the bat. You can't, a cell isn't created by just a couple molecules bumping together. Sorry, that's not how it happens. It can't. It, even, even if we put aside reason and you wanted to say, but theoretically, couldn't that happen? Molecules bumping together create a cell? No. Physically, no, it's impossible. So let me see what other points I wanted to make about abiogenesis. Oh, somebody brought up they were able to make life in the laboratory. If that's the case, that's news to me. Now, I'm not saying I'm some sort of all-knowing guru. It may have happened. The most I've heard was Sidney Fox's experiment that was rigged to work and still failed. Um, um, but I mean, think about this. All right, so PhD scientists, real smart guys, right? Smarter than me, for sure. I'm not arguing that. PhD scientists are in the lab. They create the perfect, literal test tube environment for their experiment. and then they add the exact chemicals that they think are necessary, and then and they're trying to make life, right? But they can't do it. They're trying and trying again. They try, and then they clean their highly advanced technology and set up their perfect test tube, and then add the exact chemicals needed and everything else again, and they fail again. I've never heard of this experiment working. If that is the case, okay, let's say they were able to do it. I've never heard of that, but let's say they were able to do it. This proves intelligent design. How do you guys not see this? This would prove that in order for abiogenesis to happen, it requires intelligence, an outside source making it happen. I don't know how you don't see that. What else do I want to talk about? I am actually looking at my notes for this one. My last one, I just wrote down a couple questions. But now that I know there's people watching, people trying to refute me, I busted out the notes. So let's see. All right. I guess the main last thing that I wanted to talk about is genetic information. Okay. This is the big whammy for me, okay? Oh, by the way, the double whammy that I talked about earlier that disproves evolution but proves creation at the same time is the mutations thing. We know that mutations are not beneficial. That disproves evolution, but it also points toward evidence toward a biblical creation model, because we would expect that there was originally this perfect gene code, right? That God created, and then because of the fall of man, God and the curse that God put on the earth, that is what started the genetic entropy process. Yes, entropy applies to our genetic code as well. I don't know why you would think that it didn't. Entropy applies to everything. But anyways, back to abiogenesis. Information. Okay. There is prescriptive genetic information within our DNA that, first of all, follows a linguistic law. It follows the laws of of language. That's incredible. It has punctuation. It uses an alphabet. It has commas. It says, it's prescribing how to make a protein, right? And at certain points it says stop. It has periods. At certain points it says stop for a minute. It has commas. It follows linguistics, and not only that, but it has algorithms. And algorithms require forward thinking. So in order for this, what is the process that this material comes into existence through material processes? Or I said this information comes into existence by material processes, because it's not a material thing. And this is hard for certain evolutionists to understand, but information itself is not material. It does have a material medium that holds the information, but the information itself is not material. And to prove that to you, the best way to explain this, I think anyways, is this. Okay? I am sharing information with you guys right now. Now, there are, and an evolutionist will debate this all day, saying no, it is material because of electricity in your brain, blah blah blah. Certain parts of the brain are active. But think about this: information itself is not material, and we know this because I am giving information right now, right? Is there a part of my brain matter that is going out to everybody that watches this video? If there's a man standing at a podium speaking in front of 100 people, is there brain matter leaving his brain and going into these people's brains? No, clearly not. So that shows us that information itself is not material. It may have a material medium, such as I can write information down. And so the material medium would be paper and ink. I can uh, I can send information through a text message, and the material medium would be the phone. I can. I think you get my point. It's not a material thing. So, how does this prescriptive, specific, prescriptive genetic information? Where does that come from? How does that come about through a material process? How does that happen? The material part of abiogenesis couldn't happen physically because of why I explained earlier. But there's even more that meets the eye. There is non-material components of this universe. Where did they come from? Where did information come from? I see no plausible answer to this. And I see no plausible answer to the material part of abiogenesis, which is why I called it magic in my last video. We magically got this first cell that produced more proteins. I don't buy it, and I've never heard an explanation for it. And I know there's probably going to be 100 people that are going, "You've never heard an explanation for it because you've never looked for an explanation for it." Come on. I said in my last video, I watched Aaron Ra's explanation of abiogenesis. It's not reasonable. It's silly. It's silly. It's magic. It's supernatural. What you guys claim to not even be real. Supernatural. So let me think. Let me review this main page I've been using here. See if there's anything else I want to talk about. I guess one more point that I would point out about mutations is, for an animal, for an animal to go from a non-flying animal to an animal that has flight. Do you understand how big of a change that is? The complete anatomy of the animal changes. The bones hollow out. They have to grow wings. The size of the animal probably will change, and shape of the animal probably will change. But even if it was just bones hollowing and wings forming, do mutations work together toward a goal all of a sudden? These mutations up here are saying, we'll make the wings, you guys hollow out the bones. No, of course not. Of course not. And I know that's not what you're claiming, but I don't think you guys have really thought this through all the way. How the mutations would have to be like working together. It's silly to think, obviously. Anyway, I think I've pretty much covered all the points. I'm going on a half an hour long now. I wasn't even trying to go that long. So let me just recap. and then I'll go ahead and end the video, and you guys can post a million comments insulting my intelligence, insulting me, rather than actually giving a rebuttal for what I'm saying. That's mainly what I saw in my last one. So, 1, mutations are not good. Net gain versus net loss, mutations are bad. Mutations are not neutral. Mutations do not work together toward a goal. Abiogenesis is not physically possible because you need a full cell in order to do anything. You can't get proteins without proteins. You can't get cytosine without a cell. You can't do anything. Information cannot arise from a material process because it is non-material. And so, with all this true, real science pointing against the evolution theory, what do you guys have left? Fossils? You're going to show me the bones that you found in the ground, and you're going to claim that they're transitionary fossils, but they're not truly transitionary, and I'll explain why real quick. You'll show me, for instance, we'll look at whale evolution. You'll show me a picture of an animal that sort of looks like a whale, or the fossils of an animal that sort of kind of look like a whale, but has legs, and it's a land creature. And then you'll show me a picture of an animal that looks like a whale with fins. And you'll go, you see the transition? No, I don't see the transition. It's all in your head. This is an imaginary. The whole theory is imaginary, really. But a true transitional fossil would be this: you have an animal that looks like a whale with legs, and then you have an animal that looks like a whale with slightly less legs. And then you have an animal that looks like a whale with barely any legs. And then you have an animal that looks like a whale with half legs, half fin development. And then you have an animal that looks like a whale with fins. That would be a true transition. But you don't have that because that doesn't exist. Also, just fossils themselves disprove evolution. I mean, we have fossils that are in a layer way down here, this supposed geologic column layer way down here, and then it's skipped in this layer, and this layer, and then we find this same animal all the way up here. So what, did that animal go extinct for 70 million years and then re-evolve? No, it didn't. 2, living fossils. Shrimp are supposedly this 400 million years plus years old, but the fossils of shrimp that we find look exactly like the modern day shrimp we have today. Where is the evolution? Where is the evolution? Guys, I'm sorry. Once again, I know you get emotional when I question your religious beliefs, but guys, this is a dead philosophy. It's been proven wrong by science, by modern day science. This is an outdated philosophical conception, and it's simply false. I'm sorry to say, I'm not trying to upset you. I truly am doing this out of love as well. I truly am. I know there's probably been parts of this video where I seem frustrated. That's because I am, because a lot of people are questioning my intelligence for some reason. I mean, looking at the actual evidence, there's no reason for that, but so it is a little frustrating. So I went from gentle loving to tough love in this video. This is tough love video, because I need to get it through your guys' head that this theory is dead. So anyways, go ahead and leave a million comments below about why I'm stupid and why I'm wrong, blah, blah, blah. I'll try to respond to as many as I can. No promises, though. Anyways, thanks for watching, though.